Hard to keep track, Keely, of which lawsuit is which here. Set the context for us, and what's Trump's options right now, given the verdict?
Well, of course, Ramin, this is one of the multiple civil cases he was facing, brought by the New York Attorney General Letitia James, who had asked for $370 million in damages paid for fraudulent activity that Trump undertook as part of the Trump Organization. Of course, he had already been found liable.
The quiet part already happened. The state of New York put Donald Trump one procedural step away from watching sheriffs walk onto his properties with court orders in hand. Not metaphorically, not politically, literally. Liens, forced sales, asset seizure. The kind of thing that happens to defendants, not strong men. And the only reason it didn't happen is because Trump found a temporary financial tourniquet and wrapped it tight around a hemorrhaging empire. Strip away the noise, and here is the reality. A court of law found Donald Trump guilty of long-running financial fraud. Not an allegation, not a theory, a judicial finding. Years of inflated asset valuations, years of manipulated financial statements, years of lying to banks on one end and tax authorities on the other. The ruling wasn't symbolic. It came with a price tag engineered to hurt. Nearly $500 million. Enough to force the truth out into daylight. When that judgment hit, something extraordinary happened. The mythology cracked. Trump did not reach into a vault and write a check. He did not shrug it off like a billionaire would. He panicked. His lawyers panicked. Emergency filings flooded the courts. Because New York was not bluffing. Recording the judgment in Westchester County was not paperwork theater. It was the legal prelude to confiscation, golf courses, estates, signature properties, the state moving from verdict to enforcement. That is what accountability looks like when it finally reaches someone who has spent a lifetime dodging it. And then came the bond. Not the full amount. Not even close. A fraction large enough to pause the machinery, but small enough to reveal the truth. $175 million bought him time. Not innocence, not relief. Time. A financial ceasefire while the appeal crawls forward. And that alone tells you everything you need to know about the condition of Trump's finances. Wealth that exists primarily on paper collapses the moment it's challenged by liquidity demands. Buildings don't pay judgments. Cash does. And cash is what Trump could not easily produce. This is not how untouchable men behave. This is how defendants behave when the illusion breaks. Now layer onto that a second pressure point. One Trump cannot delay with motions or bonds. Wall Street, not pundits, not critics. The people who move capital, set risk thresholds, and quietly determine whether an economy breathes easily or gasps for air. And they are no longer whispering. They are issuing warnings, public ones. Major bank CEOs stepping into the light to tell a sitting president to stop attacking the Federal Reserve is not normal. It is not routine. It is an alarm bell. Banks do not like public conflict. They prefer private leverage. When they go public, it is because the private channels have failed, because the person on the other end is not listening or does not care. Trump has spent months escalating his war on independent economic institutions, threatening the Fed chair, undermining monetary independence, floating a blunt force 10% cap on credit card interest rates as if complex financial systems respond to slogans. This is not populism. It is economic vandalism disguised as concern. And Wall Street understands exactly what it would do. Credit contraction, risk pullbacks, lending freezes, the kind of cascade that doesn't hurt banks first. It hurts households. Investors know this too. And investors despise uncertainty more than they despise regulation. What they are watching is a president inserting himself directly into markets, replacing predictability with impulse, announcing policies without frameworks, attacking companies without warning, treating global capital flows like a personal loyalty test. This is what economists mean when they talk about a visible hand, not guidance, interference, not stability, volatility injected from the top. Money flees that environment, quietly at first, then all at once. The phrase circulating now is "sell America." It is not ideological, it is risk management. When the president becomes a destabilizing variable rather than a stabilizing force, capital looks for calmer water. Europe, Asia, anywhere governed by rules instead of moods. And that shift does not stay confined to trading desks. It bleeds into pension funds, retirement accounts, job security, economic growth itself. This is where the two stories converge. Trump's personal financial exposure and the broader market's reaction to his behavior are not separate threads. They are reinforcing each other. A man found liable for systemic fraud now trying to strong-arm independent institutions while under massive personal financial stress is not just a political problem, it is a governance crisis. Look at the pattern. Authoritarian leaders under pressure almost always attempt to control the systems that can expose their weakness. Courts, media, central banks, markets. Trump's attacks are not random, they are defensive. He is attempting to dominate institutions precisely because he is losing the ability to rely on them. The fraud judgment stripped away his credibility. Wall Street's warnings strip away his leverage. This is where constitutional danger enters the frame. The Federal Reserve's independence is not a suggestion. It is a structural safeguard designed to prevent political capture of monetary policy. When a president openly threatens that independence, it is not merely bad economics. It is an erosion of the separation between political power and financial governance. That erosion does not stop with interest rates. It metastasizes. Add due process to that equation. Trump's reaction to the fraud ruling was not contrition or reform. It was delegitimization. The judge was corrupt. The process was rigged. The verdict was illegal. This is the same playbook used against elections, prosecutors, and juries. Undermine the institution so the outcome can be dismissed. That is not the behavior of someone committed to constitutional norms. It is the behavior of someone preparing the ground to ignore them. And now the walls are closing in from multiple directions. The courts have labeled his business practices fraudulent. The state has demonstrated a willingness to seize assets. Financial elites are warning him to stop destabilizing the economy. Investors are hedging against his unpredictability. Each of these forces alone would be significant. Together, they form a vice. Trump's entire political identity is built on the myth of financial mastery. The genius dealmaker, the billionaire who knows the system better than the system knows itself. That myth is collapsing in real time. Fraud findings puncture it. Bond scrambling exposes it. Wall Street resistance humiliates it. You cannot posture as an economic savior while being treated as a financial liability by the people who actually run the numbers. This is why the moment matters. Not because Trump might lose money, but because the mechanisms designed to constrain abuse are finally activating simultaneously. Legal accountability, market discipline, institutional resistance. This is what democratic systems are supposed to do when confronted with a figure who treats power as personal property. The danger is not gone. It is evolving. A cornered political actor with declining credibility and mounting financial stress is unpredictable. History is littered with examples of leaders who, when faced with exposure, choose escalation over restraint. That is why vigilance matters now more than ever. This is not a scandal cycle. It is a stress test. Pay attention to what happens next. Watch the appeals. Watch the bond deadlines. Watch the Fed rhetoric. Watch capital flows. These are not abstract indicators. They are warning signs. Miss them, and you miss the moment when pressure turns into rupture. Stay alert, because the cost of looking away is always paid later, and always by people who never consented to the risk.